Yes to hope and encouragement, and go with grace. Tuesdays at 2:30 with Joe Grace on GQ Radio. Joe is a U.S. Army Reserve chaplain with over 16 years of military service, and he's ready to bless and encourage you through whatever battles you're facing. Each week, Go with Grace will also be geared towards our military veterans, their special stories, interviews, and you'll even hear music created by our awesome vets. Jump on the Yes train and join Joe Grace, a friend and mentor for Go with Grace, Tuesdays at 2:30 on GQ Radio.
Good afternoon, GQ Radio audience. This is Joe, and we're here for another episode of Go with Grace. Thank you guys for tuning in today. To start off with, I want to share with you something that happened to me last week. In fact, it happened to me right after my first broadcast last week. It was kind of interesting. So I had my first radio show last week, as you know, and I was nervous as I am now, and a little fearful, but I embraced the fear and got into it and had a great time. I had some great comments. So those of you that commented, I thank you for that. So the very next day after doing my first broadcast, I go to work and I was laid off from my main source of income as a hospital chaplain. The amazing thing was I was at that time, and I'm still at perfect peace, because I knew God was leading me elsewhere. I've been feeling this way for several months, but not knowing where that was and just been in prayer about it. But I had no idea of the timing or what God was doing. But I sensed the change was about to take place. At first I was shocked and hurt, and mostly I just missed the patients I was working with and my fellow employees that I enjoyed being with. But God has a plan that I'm unsure how it will unfold, but it doesn't matter. God, the grand overall designer, is my provider, not whoever signs my paychecks at any given time. So I want to encourage you with that, and I'm glad to be here again this week. Fear kept me from taking action, and just before my first broadcast last week, I was even considering backing out. Well, that ain't going to happen, though, for God has given me a message for His people, and all that I've been through has led me to this day. And all He's done so far is just a glimpse of what He has planned for me. So be clear when I say this, it's not about me. I didn't seek this opportunity out to be on this radio show. It was given to me, and I see that, and did at the time see it as God giving me a new direction. This is about impacting others through what I have seen and experienced, and that is what this show is all about. It's all about you as a listener and helping you get to where you're going on your growth journey. God has something amazing in store for you if you're ready to do that. Allow me to encourage you to keep growing. If you're not there, then be encouraged, because it's never, never, never too late to start doing what God created you to do. I also got to send out a shout out to one of my fellow John Maxwell team members, Derek Butts. Check him out on Facebook. He's got a new book out, Make Every Day Your Wednesday, as in W-I-N, Wednesday. He had a similar experience I'm describing to you today. When it came to living out his calling, he referred to the fear of stepping out in faith and not living your calling as sucking on the pacifier. When I heard him say that today, I just laughed, but it's so true. And I really liked when he said that. And it's like when we do that, we aren't suggesting that you quit your job, but when we suck on the pacifier, it's like we're depending on our employer to be our provider, and that's not the way it should be. Hey, we all have to pay bills, and we have people we're responsible for, but sucking on the pacifier and trusting your job to be your source may not be the best that God has for you. And today I'm going to be asking you some questions that you need to answer for yourself if you want to fulfill your destiny. As we say in the military, just keep pounding. Never give up. Never give in to fear. So here's the plan for Go with Grace today. In the first two segments, we're going to discuss the law of awareness. In the first segment, I'll talk to you about some questions that you need to answer for yourself about what you want to do. In segment 2, we continue the discussion of the law of awareness by talking about the questions you need to ask yourself to answer the questions of how to start moving in the right direction for you. After a short break, we will then talk about our Medal of Honor Minute. Today we'll hear about Private David Benez Barkley and his heroic actions during World War I. Then in this week's episode of Today in History, we'll talk about some funny things I found from history. And if time allows, I'll then go over a few more of Jack Canfield's turnaround statements I told you about last week. I hope you had a chance to look those up, but if not, we're going to talk about those again today. And then I'll share with you some ways to motivate yourself to lose weight. So let's get started. Before we do that, I thought I would inject some humor, so let's start off with some corny dad jokes. I'm known for doing that in the military, so I thought I would continue that tradition here. So one of my ones I like to say is, don't argue with an idiot. He'll drag you down to his level and beat you with experience. We'll take some other joke breaks later in the show, but for now we're going to start with the law of awareness. The law of awareness: you must know yourself to grow yourself. James Russell Knowles says, no one can produce great results unless they are thoroughly sincere in dealing with himself. What a powerful statement that is, right? You and I need to become aware of who we are and what our passion is. We need to know what our purpose is. So let me ask you, do you have a sense of direction for your life? To grow yourself, you must know a few things. You must know your strengths. You must know your weaknesses. You must know your interests, and you must know your opportunities. You must be able to gauge not only where you've been, but also where you are now. Otherwise, you can't set a course for where you want to go. Every time you learn something, you must be able to take that new thing you've learned today and build upon what you've learned yesterday to keep going. That's the only way you're going to gain traction and keep improving yourself. To reach your full potential, you must know where you are and where you want to be. Knowing yourself is like reading a where you are map when you find your way to a destination. For those of you that were young enough to still go to malls when they existed, they always had a map when you found where you were and found the Vans store you wanted to go to. Well, I've observed three things that there are really only three kind of people when it comes to finding direction in life. Number one, people who don't know what they would like to do. In other words, they're confused. The second kind are people who know what they want to do, but they don't do it. These kinds of people are usually frustrated. Sometimes they aren't doing what they want because they worry it will cause them to neglect other responsibilities, such as providing for their families. Sometimes aren't willing to pay the price to learn, to grow, and move closer to where they want to be. And other times, fear prevents them from changing course to pursue their passion. No matter what the reason is, they too miss their potential. And the third kind of people are people who know what they want to do and they do it. These types of people know themselves. They possess a strong sense of passion. They are focused on a purpose. They grow in areas that help them move closer to their purpose. And they do what they were created to do. The word that best describes them is fulfilled. So let's take another quick joke break. And our first one for this break is, light travels faster than sound. This is why some people appear brighter until you hear them speak. And the second one, always borrow money from a pessimist. Always borrow money from a pessimist because they won't expect it back. And third, if God really is watching us, at least let's be entertaining. So y'all be entertaining out there. When people talk about themselves and are trying to find themselves, when a person tries to find out their passion and their purpose, there are some things we've got to keep in mind. First, we need to have personal awareness. Joe, what do you mean by personally aware? Well, I'm glad you asked. Knowing yourself isn't necessarily an easy thing for anyone to do. President Woodrow Wilson made the following comment at a commencement speech at Princeton. We live in an age disturbed, confused, bewildered, afraid of its own forces, in search not merely of its road, but even of its direction. There are many voices of counsel, but few voices of wisdom. There is much excitement and feverish activity, but little concern of thoughtful purpose. We are disturbed by our ungoverned, undirected energies, and do many things, but nothing long. It is our duty to find ourselves. The amazing thing is that Wilson had that statement in 1907. Just imagine what he would say if he was alive today, huh? What makes finding ourselves and growing to our potential so difficult for some people? Well, it can be a bit of a catch-22. You see, you have to know who you are to grow to your potential, but you have to grow in order to know who you are. So what's the solution? Explore yourself as you explore growth. That is the answer. The way to start is to pay attention to your passions. Nathaniel Branden says the first step toward change is awareness. And the second step is acceptance. You must know yourself and accept who you are before you can start building. The first question I would ask you about your passion is this: do you like what you're doing now? Surprisingly, the majority of people will usually say no. I like a quote I found from Bob Dylan. He says, What's money? A man is a success if he gets up in the morning and goes to bed at night, and in between does what he wants to do. Y'all help me out. I would like to see some comments on the Facebook about why would someone keep doing something they didn't like doing. Can you guys help me understand that, or like to have your input, or if you think I'm off base or whatever. So let's take some time and have some comments. I'll get back to them and respond. Why would someone get up and go to work at a job they don't like and then complain about it all day and call it life? No one wants to work alongside that person either, do they? While that person is miserable, guess what they do? They make you miserable too. Haven't you ever experienced that? What did I do? Well, you sat by that person. Have you ever just been beside miserable before? They suck the joy right out of you. Philosopher Abraham Kaplan noted, if as Socrates said, the unexplained life is not worth living, so the unlived life is worth examining. If you aren't enjoying what you're doing for a living, you need to take some time to ask yourself why. Listen, I understand the necessity of making a living. We've all done jobs we didn't love. Is it a risk making a change for what you're currently doing to what you want to do? Of course it is. You might fail. You might find out that you don't like it as much as you expected. You might not make as much money. But isn't there also a great risk in staying where you are? You still might fail. You might get fired or laid off. Or worst of all, you might come to the end of your life feeling regret for never having reached your potential or doing what you really love. Which would you rather risk? I can tell you from experience, I left a full-time job to take a part-time job as a hospital chaplain because it was all I could find. And let me tell you, I had to make some sacrifices too. I had to sell my fancy car, and worst of all, I had to sell my Harley. But what did I gain? What I gained was much more worth it. I gave up a 2-hour daily commute for a 10-minute drive to work. And I gained the opportunity to work in a job I'd been searching for over 3 years. I wasn't looking for part-time work, but that's what was offered, and I took it. To be honest, I believe it was what God brought my way because I diligently sought it and prayed for it. I can also tell you from experience, from all the patients I've encountered at the hospital over the past 5 years, no one has ever told me they couldn't wait to get back to their job. They do say things like they want to have more time with family, more time with those they love, and more time to do the things they are passionate about. So what is your passion? It's no wonder some people look forward to retirement. They can't hardly wait to get out. Work for them is like prison. They're going to be free at last. The second question is, what would you like to do? Because there is a direct relationship between finding your passion and reaching your potential, that's a fact. So what would you like to do? Let me just say, since we're talking about personal growth, your motivation and the difficulty with which you face challenges completely changes when you link what you would like to do with your passion. You've got to ask yourself, what would you really like to do? Before this happens in our lives, before we really ask ourselves this question and really reflect on the answer, we spend our lives not getting what we want to get to where we aren't even sure we even want to go there. You've got to ask yourself, what would you really like to do? Because when you find that you'd really like to do what you'd really like to do, that will ignite your passion. And when your passion is ignited, that begins to increase your potential. That's when you start moving up the potential ladder. When you tap into your passion, it gives you the E&E factor, energy and excellence. Will you never fulfill your destiny? You will never fulfill your destiny doing work you despise. Passion gives you an advantage over others. Why is that so, you ask? Well, it's because one person with passion is greater than 99 who have only an interest. And also, passion gives you energy. Question number 3, can you do what you would like to do? Because some people are very passionate about doing something, but they aren't very good at it. Now, if you're not very good at something you're passionate about, you want to make that a hobby, not a career. A hobby is a wonderful thing, but you don't have to be good at it. You must find something that is aligned with your gifting and opportunities before you. You must have some kind of criteria for knowing if the desire you have matches the abilities you possess. The poet Samuel Johnson observed, "Most every man wastes part of his life in attempts to display qualities which he does not possess." Your goal should be to waste as little of your life as possible. As former MLB catcher Jim Sundberg says, discover your uniqueness, then discipline yourself to develop it. Question number 4, you must ask yourself, do you know why you want to do what you would like to do? You've got to have an answer to this question. You've got to know your why, and it's got to be a powerful why. Your why will drive and motivate you when it comes time to answer the how will you do it. The work I do as a chaplain is a calling on my life. It's what I was born to do. It gives me energy, and most importantly, it makes a difference in the lives of other people. Just as assuredly as I know I was born to do what I do, I believe the same kind of passion and satisfaction is possible for you. You too can experience a great deal of success and, more importantly, significance if you do the things you were meant to do. So take some time this week to reflect. Explore your intentions and explore your attitudes. As psychiatrist Carl Jung advised, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, but who looks inside awakens. That is what awareness is all about, knowing yourself and knowing your purpose. These 4 questions I've posed to you relate to what you want to do. You must know yourself to grow yourself. That's the law of awareness. But I also want you to gain a sense of how to start moving in the right direction. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to go over some questions you need to ask yourself that will help you to target and eventually fine-tune your growth. The remaining questions we will discuss will help you create a game plan. All right, welcome back, GQ Radio audience and Go With Grace listeners. Hope you liked our little break there. That was Robert Randolph from the Family Band. He's one of my favorite musicians. That's blues music and faith mixed all in together. It's pretty awesome. I've seen him live a couple years ago. I highly recommend check him out. So let's get right back into our discussion about the law of awareness. The rest of these questions will help you create a game plan for how to start moving toward doing what you want to do. doing what you were created to do. Question number 5 is the next question you've got to ask yourself. Do you know what you want to do so that you can do what you want to do? Do you know what to do so you can do what you want to do? Make sure I said that right. You've got to have awareness. In other words, you've got to become very conscious of every choice you make. You can't change direction if you aren't aware of that you're not headed where you want to go. To do what you want to do requires action. The major difference between those who do it and those who don't do it is that those who do it, do it. That sounds silly, I know, doesn't it? What I'm trying to say is this. The people that do it, they take action rather than making excuses. Because you can't win if you don't begin. To do what you want to do requires accountability. Few things prompt a person to follow through like accountability. One of the ways you can do that is to make your goals public. When you tell others about what you intend to do, it puts pressure on you to keep working at it. And finally, to do what you want to do requires attraction. Who are the people you are attracting? Are you seeking out and attracting people who are like-minded in success? You know the old saying, birds of a feather flock together? Well, it's true. And then question number 6, you must ask yourself, do you know people who do what you would like to do? This is very important. This is a question of having a mentor or a coach to guide you along the way. Having someone to help you to get to where you want to be. You must find people ahead of where you are who are able to show you the way forward. Once you've discovered what you want to do, start finding people who do what you want to do with excellence. Then do what you must to learn from them. So you have to get committed, not to an institution either. You have to get committed that you will be willing to pay whatever it costs for their time and advice. So many people don't reach their potential because they're unwilling to pay the price to grow themselves. You also have to be consistent. You've got to meet regularly with someone who can help you and teach you. You also have to be creative. Learn from people even if you can't spend time with them face to face. Start by reading their books if you can't meet with them in person. You also have to be very purposeful. Prepare for every interaction. Don't wing it. Have a list of questions prepared in advance, so when the opportunity presents itself, you are ready to ask the kind of questions that will help you in moving forward. You also have to be reflective. You must make time to reflect on every encounter and discover what you are learning. In other words, you've got to milk every ounce of learning from every experience life provides for you. And you have to be grateful. Always show appreciation for what you are learning from others. And always remember, you can't get to where you want to go on your own. You will need the help of others to guide you along the way. Okay, so let's take another quick joke break. And let's see some good corny dad jokes here. Okay, number 1. Did you hear the joke about the broken submarine? It didn't go down very well. And how do you tell if a vampire is sick? Because he's always coughing. This is my favorite as a Christian. Is like, what is it called when Batman skips church? Christian Bale. All right, back to the action, back to our purpose here today. Now we're at question number 7. Should you do what you would like to do with them? In other words, is the person the right mentor or coach for you? In a mentoring relationship, it's important that you explore your own learning by observing the following process. Here is what I asked you. Here is what I heard you share with me. Here is what I did. Now can I ask you more questions? Those 4 questions will guide a good mentoring relationship. We'll talk more about mentoring on another day as we get further through our laws of growth. But when I mentor other people, my responsibility and my goal is to add value. Much like my desire and intent for this radio show, I want to add value to your life and to your journey. My goal is to help you become more the person you are meant to be each day and not try to make you something that you're not. Every person who can help you is not necessarily the right person for you. You must pick and choose. Your goal should be to find a fit that is mutually beneficial. And then question number 8, will you pay the price to do what you want to do? Author and educator James Tom says, I got to the top the hard way by fighting my own laziness and ignorance every step of the way. Now, whoever of you out there can identify with that, let me get a thumbs up, a like, a smiley face, a heart, or how you've done that in your life. That sure has a lot of truth in it for me, I can tell you that. When it comes to barriers to success, we are usually our own worst enemies, and that again is true for me for sure. Taking the steps necessary to live your dreams and do what you want to do will cost you. You will have to work hard. You will have to make sacrifices. You will have to keep learning. You will have to keep growing. And you will have to keep changing. Are you willing to pay that price? And then question 9, when can you start doing what you would like to do? Here's what's wonderful. If you have something you'd like to do that you aren't doing right now, guess what? You can start. You can start today, and I encourage you to do it. You can get going. You may not be able to get the job you want yet, but you can start by learning. Ask most people when they will do what they want to do, and most will answer someday. I have certainly said that myself. For me, my excuses were always because I wasn't ready. Well, guess what? You will never feel ready. But if you wait until you feel ready, you'll probably never do it. I didn't feel ready to do this show, and I still don't feel ready. I'm nervous, but I also knew last week before I started this show that I'd never get good at it if I didn't start. As I told you before, I knew about this show and was preparing for it for 2 months, but the week before, honestly, I really wanted to quit because I was so nervous. But again, as I said, it came down to me knowing that if I didn't start, I wouldn't get better at it. And I know that this radio show was given to me by God, and I'm going to embrace the learning process, and I pray that you'll continue to journey with me. So I'm glad you're here listening, and I pray that you're getting something of value out of our time together. But I want to promise you this, that this show and I are going to grow, and it's going to get better than it is today. So keep listening. You will only get ready by starting. One of my mentors, Paul Martinelli, says it this way. He often says, do it afraid. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I challenge you to do the same thing. I will be one of your biggest fans, and I will cheer you on. So let me know what it is that you want to accomplish. What big goals, big, hairy, audacious goals are you setting for yourself as we approach the new decade? And question number 10, what will it be like when you get to do what you want to do? We have to use our imagination for this one. Isn't it easy for us to imagine a worst-case scenario? When we think about the future or when we want to make plans for the future, it's easy to think of all the things that can go wrong or how we shouldn't do it or what we should be afraid of. But the fact that we can imagine a worst-case scenario also tells us something. It assures us and gives us total proof that we can also imagine a best-case scenario. This is important to grasp. Don't let this one escape you. Where your thoughts go, your energy flows. Man, that's good. Isn't that awesome? That alone is worth listening to today's show, so write that one down. I'm going to say that again. Where your thoughts go, so your energy flows. You indeed have the ability and the power to create your future with your thinking. Something else that's powerfully important to remember when it comes to doing something you've never done before. Don't allow fear to stop you in your tracks. You aren't going to know how to do something until after you've done it or after you've started it. You must suspend your desire to know how to do something before you take action. Here's a few things to keep in mind about what it will be like when you get to do what you want to do. Number 1, it will be different than you ever imagined. Number 2, it will be more difficult than you ever imagined. And the good news is 3, when you do what you've always wanted to do, it will be better than you ever imagined. That's because nothing else compares to doing what you were created to do. People say that there are two great days in a person's life: the day they were born and the day they discover why. Well, I'm here to tell you, I've had my two great days, and let me reassure you something. I didn't always do what was necessary, and I sure had my fair share of setbacks and failures. In fact, from the day I discovered my why, that I was called to be an Army chaplain, it took almost 9 years to actually do that job for the very first day. Between my education and professional background I was required to get, it took a long time to get there, but I had hope because I knew that was my calling. Now, I hope and pray it doesn't take you 9 years, but the time frame doesn't matter when you're walking in your calling. I want to encourage you to seek what you were put on this earth to do. Then I want you to pursue it with all your effort. So that's what this law is all about: understanding yourself, understanding your passion, knowing what your purpose is, and then saying, now that I know who I am, I'm going to know how to grow myself. The law of awareness, it's huge. I believe in you, and I believe in your passion and your purpose. Take time this week to reflect on your two great days. I'd love to hear from you, so please email me, go to gqradio.com, or reach out to me through the comments below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll be sure to respond as soon as I get a chance. Let's take a quick break and listen to another Robert Randolph song, Thankful and Thoughtful. All right, so 2 more quick silly dad jokes. What do you call a belt with a watch on it? A waste of time. This one I really like. Why do seagulls fly over the sea? Because if they flew over the bay, they would be called bagels. All right, so now we're going to talk about our Medal of Honor minute, and today we're talking about David Benez Barkley, Private U.S. Army. He was a medal recipient honor from World War I. Private David Benez Barkley was born 31 March 1899 and died in combat on 9 November 1918. He was a U.S. Army soldier who was posthumously awarded the U.S. military's highest award for valor, the Medal of Honor, for his heroic actions during World War I. He was one of 3 Texans to be awarded the Medal of Honor in World War I. David Benez Barkley was born on 31 March 1899 in Laredo, Texas, to Joseph and Antonio Cantu Barkley, and grew up with his Mexican-American mother. He enlisted in the Army when the U.S. entered what was then known as the Great War. He used his Anglo father's name to avoid being segregated into a non-combat unit. As part of Company A, 356th Infantry, 89th Division in France, he and Sergeant M. Waldo Hatler swam across the Meuse River near Pouilly-sur-Meuse to get behind enemy lines, German enemy lines, and gather information about troop strength and deployments. They were able to gather the needed information. However, returning across the river, Barkley was seized with cramps and drowned. Sergeant Hatler survived to bring the information back to their unit. For his heroism, Barkley was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. The citation reads as followed. When information was desired as to the enemy's position on the opposite side of the Meuse River, Private Barkley, with another soldier, volunteered without hesitation and swam the river to reconnoiter the exact location. He succeeded in reaching the opposite bank, despite the evident determination of the enemy to prevent a crossing. Having obtained his information, he again entered the water for his return, but before his goal was reached, he was seized with cramps and drowned. Some other cool honors that are associated with Private Barkley. In 1921, the elementary school in San Antonio, Texas was named in his honor. On 10 January 1941, the U.S. Army installation Camp Barkley was named in his honor. A clerical error resulted in the discrepancy in the spelling, which added an E between the K and the L. So, when his Hispanic background was discovered in 1989, Barkley was recognized as the U.S. Army's first Hispanic Medal of Honor recipient. A memorial honoring the 41 Hispanic soldiers who have received the Medal of Honor was built in Laredo, Texas in 2002, and the plaza was named after David Barkley. The David B. Barkley Plaza has a bronze statue of him and an American flag measuring 100 feet by 50 feet and is 308 feet tall, making it one of the tallest flagpoles in the United States. And next we're going to go to our Today in History. I didn't find anything that really jumped out at me as far as today in history, but while I was doing my research, I came across a list that was created by a website called Kick-Ass Facts Fact Encyclopedia. So I figured, hey, there's got to be something I can pull from their website. So I thought this would work. So here are a few of the 25 kick-ass and funniest events in history. After World War I, the Australian military started the Great Emu War, where they tried to cull emus with machine guns. 6 days after the first engagement, 2,500 rounds of ammunition had been fired and no emu was killed. It was declared an emu victory in the end. You can't make this stuff up. In the entire state of Ohio in 1895, there were only 2 cars on the road, and the drivers of these 2 cars crashed into each other. You can't make this stuff up. Life is hilarious and kick-ass. Early in the Spanish Civil War, there was a nationalist garrison under siege. Having local air superiority, the nationalists decided to airdrop their supplies. The humor comes from their chosen method of making sure the packages got to the ground without being damaged. They didn't use a parachute, but instead they strapped a turkey to each package. It couldn't carry the load, but it could slow down it a bit on the way down, and unlike a parachute, you can eat a turkey. This next one is good. Andrew Jackson was an American soldier and statesman who served as the 7th President of the United States from 1829 to 1837. At his funeral in 1845, his pet parrot had to be removed because it was swearing. This is the quote from the Reverend Normant, from his recollection. Before the sermon and while the crowd was gathering, a wicked parrot that was a household pet got excited and commenced to swearing so loud and long that it disturbed everybody and had to be carried from the house. Now that is funny. And certainly but not least, today is another historic day in the 115th World Series. And we've got to talk about the Astros, don't we? I also want to tell you that I did my part this past weekend because it didn't look so great after we lost the first 2 games and our away games didn't go well. So you see, I want to tell you that I did my part. I wore my Loud and Proud Astros loudmouth shorts 3 times. I'll show you a quick picture if you guys can see it, but just to give you guys a visual, I ordered these a couple of weeks ago for the World Series, and apparently wearing them paid off. You can see on the bottom, that's a picture of me wearing my loudmouth Astro shorts. So the first opportunity was Friday during the Friday game on our monthly veterans ride through downtown Houston. And let me tell you, that was a blast. The event is normally called Critical Mass. It's a nationwide biking movement. But this past Friday was a combo deal because it was called Critical Massacre to celebrate Halloween and to support the Astros. So I braved the unusually cold weather in Houston last Friday and wore my Astros loudmouth shorts. Then Saturday, we went to hear Pastor Joseph Prince preach. He's an evangelist and senior pastor of the New Creation Church based in Singapore. I like him for several reasons, but one of the biggest reasons is he has a great sense of humor. Before he started to preach on Saturday, he got on the stage and he bowed his head to pray. And what did he say? Lord, may the Astros win tonight. And let me tell you, the place went nuts. He knows how to work a crowd. And then on Sunday, I wore those same loud Astros shorts to church, just to make sure God knew which team he should support. And it worked. So we got a couple more minutes before we wrap up, and have my wrap-up comments. So I wanted to go through and share with you again some of those turnaround statements that I shared with you last week from Jack Canfield. So again, the idea is to have a turnaround statement when we have negative thinking, or a lot of times we have limiting beliefs that keep us from accomplishing the goals and dreams and vision we have set before us. So a lot of times we'll have negative thinking, and we have to have, one of the ways to defeat that is to have what Jack Canfield calls a turnaround statement. As I shared with you last week, one of the ones that resonate with me that I use is mistakes are never acceptable. If I make one, it means that I'm incompetent. The turnaround statement to that is to make mistakes is to be human. I choose to learn from my mistakes, and it's okay. And that definitely encouraged me to do this show. As I've shared with you several times, it's easy to get in front of a crowd and speak as a chaplain. I've gotten better at it, but it's one thing to speak to a camera with no interaction. So it's been a challenge, and I'm nervous about it, but I'm going to get better and continue to bring you the message that God lays upon my heart for you. So another turnaround statement he has is the negative thought is when someone disagrees with me, it's a personal attack against me. But the turnaround statement is, it's okay when others disagree with me. I can stand it. I can agree with others. I can't agree with others all the time. Another one is, if I'm not involved in an intimate relationship, I must be completely alone. The turnaround statement for that is to tell yourself that I'm okay if I do not have a significant other. Great people are coming my way. And another one is, nothing ever turns out the way I want it to. But the turnaround statement for you to use for that negative thought is, this is not working out like the way I want, but I can stand it. For every door that closes, a new one opens. And man, I can tell you that's true. Certainly proved to be true in my life that last week. If the outcome is not perfect, it was a complete failure, and I am a complete failure. The turnaround statement for that is that nothing is perfect, and I can stand it. I and the situation are okay. I can stand this. So that brings me to the end of our show today. I want to thank you guys for listening to Go With Grace again today on episode 2. Next week, we'll be looking at the law of the mirror, which says you must see value in yourself to add value to yourself. And remember, we're on this journey together. It's an exciting journey, and it's a daily growth journey. And it lasts a lifetime. And I'm glad to have you listening, and I pray you'll continue this journey with me. And remember, don't go it alone. Get going, get growing, or you can't go it alone. God bless you guys, and I will see you next week.